we talk about digital transformation, and of course that sometimes means different things for different people. Where there's Industry 4.0 mixed in there. It's probably more clear in Europe when we talk about these terms because a lot of these terms have been pioneered, Industry 4.0, and they really have a playbook for it, and it's very, very, I would say maybe not perfectly defined, but very, very well defined. But digital transformation, small companies are starting out in that journey, and it can be daunting for them, right? There's a lot there, and we talk about digital threads and all these things, and yet we don't always see companies doing this, right?
Sure.
So it sounds like it's a better PowerPoint discussion than it is a practically executable discussion where a company, and especially a small size company, could go implement this, make money at it, get the return on investment, return on capital they're going to deploy to do it, and then see a big gain out of it. So just thinking about all this, and what's your view on it, and how do you think those small companies could potentially scale with this?
Yeah, no, it's a great topic. And for sure, if you look at a company like Siemens, right, they have amazing technology and they talk about this all-inclusive digital transformation and start to finish and digital design all the way through the value chain to, you're making a product and feeding it all back. For someone to implement all that right from the get-go, it's daunting. It never happened, right? So how do you start to take pieces of it and take the most high valuable pieces and get started, right? So, our view of the world is like, if you're a small machine builder, your digital transformation could be just getting some sensors on my machine and getting some critical feedback and just start there. And now if you're a little bit more advanced and you have some intelligence on your factory floor, maybe it's like, all right, well, let's start looking at, how do we plan our process better? How do we optimize material flow within the factory? Or how do we optimize our new machines coming in? And what are we demanding from our machine builders as far as digital twins and whatnot? So it varies so much, but what we're trying to do, and I know AXD is trying to do the same thing, is enable people to get started. And that could be like, I've got this one problem process. Let's digitalize it. Let's make a digital twin out of it. Let's really analyze it. And then we can fix it virtually and then take the know-how from the virtual model and put it into the real world and really see gains that way.
Yeah. Yeah, great. And I was thinking, and I think, beyond digital twin being well, I think digital twins today are being used, and they are, you are using simulation, and I think that's probably one of the good advances, and that probably is the great advance in digital transformation, is being able to simulate, right? And I think simulation is happening at all different scales and all different levels. I think digital threads are going to be a while. People don't know exactly what it is and how to make it work, and so you hear a lot of the nomenclature being thrown around, but you see very few practical examples of it being deployed. Now, maybe that's going to change in the future. For all that we talked about with labor, but I think simulation, to your point, is really one of those game changers, right? Where you can optimize a lot of things and not physically have it done. I know in automation it's done. I know you can simulate, loads and automation systems without having to be there, and that there are big game changing advantages out of that, right? And that could be a big step forward. And then when you think about digitalization strategies, brownfield and greenfield. I mean, the United States, we're a brownfield environment, right? Predominantly, a lot of aging assets at the end of their life right now. I don't know, you walk into any factory 100 feet, in any direction from you, small or mid-size, even large size, and you're going to find technology there that's 30 or 40 years old, right? So brownfield is very prevalent here, and there has to be a lot of modernization that goes on in those brownfields. So knowing that we still have more brownfields than anything else, and we have greenfields on the way with the economic stimulus and the 10 trillion of investments. I mean, can you give us a little bit of color on your view of the brownfield and greenfield, and how's that going to work together, right? So,
Sure.
How are companies? You got, on one hand, companies got to find a way to upgrade, 1980s or 90s technology, and on the other side, they're trying to get super sophisticated in these cutting edge plants and cutting edge manufacturing facilities. So, I mean, how do you think about that? And how do you counsel companies to make that a smoother transition?
Yeah, that's a very, very difficult question for sure, but there's a lot of moving parts to that. So you can take one example of, you've got a factory that's been there since the 80s or late 90s, and you're adding machinery to that factory to optimize or to bring in a new line or whatnot, but it still has to communicate to the old machinery. So right there is a challenge. Like, how do you make that happen? How do you have dissimilar networks talking together? And then how do you even get data out of the old machinery to flow into the process that you have now, right? And there's tools and, different solutions that we certainly consult our customer base on, and it's there. It's not simple, but it's there, right? And then if you look at complete new builds, you can take a different approach, right? There you can start looking at, does some of the edge ecosystem and technology make sense to start implementing from the ground floor, right? Like what differentiates that and the processing capabilities, and how you lay out factories versus how they did 10, 20, 30 years ago. And you can have those discussions, and you can kind of mix and match, or add some where it makes sense, or go all in and do it from, the whole clean sheet approach. So we're seeing a lot of different things. We're working with some large manufacturers that are looking and embracing edge. Some of them are embracing some virtual PLCs, which is a pretty wild idea if you think about it, that a PLC could reside a couple kilometers away and running a process and not having any issues doing it, right?
Right.
Having that discussion 10 years ago or 15 years ago, it's a non-starter. People would laugh at it, and now it's a reality. So in the next 5 or 10 years, where all this technology goes is going to be pretty exciting, and pretty frightening to some people that don't want to change, to your point earlier, right?
Yeah. And I think the more usability that you drive into it, and the easier it is, the more adoption you're going to get, right? Think about the IoT tools we use today, how easy they are to plug in, get connected, and you can look at your data, whether it's your car app for your electric car, or your Ring doorbell, or your thermostat. I mean, it's connected fast, and you can get data, and you can understand how to use it, and it's giving you insights on what you're saving and what you're, and you feel good about that. And I think, tech companies have to figure out how to do that on the manufacturing floor to speed adoption.